Have you ever made a mistake that cost you a lot of time, money, energy?
Oh, we sure have, and that's why we wanted to share our top 10 biggest mistakes we've made learning guitar.
So far.
Okay, we'll hit these pretty quick. I know there's 10 of them, but the hope here is that if you kind of avoid the mistakes that we made, that it will take years off your learning, or you'll get better a lot faster.
Yeah, and if you have any mistakes that you've made along your journey, feel free to share them in the comments, and maybe you can help someone else who's going through the same thing.
Okay, number one. This is mine. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And my first one is not learning the notes on the fretboard dead cold. And for a long time, I thought I had this done. But let me tell you this, knowing the names of the notes on the fretboard and referencing a different note to figure out a note, like the note on the low A string, go up 2 frets over 2 strings to find the next octave, that's not knowing the names of the notes on the fretboard. That's knowing how to find the notes on the fretboard. But knowing the names of the notes on the fretboard cold has helped me so much. And it literally took me, I was at a Joe Satriani camp, and it literally took him, one of my biggest heroes ever, saying, if you don't know the names of the notes on the fretboard, then you're kidding yourself if you want to be a great guitar player. So I was like, fine, I went home and did it.
Number 2 for me is being inconsistent with my practice, not putting it on the schedule. Sometimes I would either get discouraged or get busy and think, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow. And then it would be literally months before I would come back to it. So I've lost a lot of time with that one.
I could put inconsistency on my top 10 as well. It'd probably be a lot farther down the list just because I never go too long without playing or practicing.
I've gone long stretches of time.
All right, number 3, and this one, I'm still fighting against this one. That's focusing on chops instead of like the harmony or knowing my chord shapes up and down the fretboard and applying things in a musical way. So I could spend hours a day practicing chop stuff.
Just like doing drills.
Yeah,
and
drills
stuff.
and BPM things, and I could be totally happy and have fun doing that. But it doesn't.
I can't relate.
It doesn't get you very far down the musical road, which is very tough because when you go over to play some specific chord changes or things that are just outside of the pop realm of a 1-4-5 or even 1-4-5 stuff, it gets really hard to choose your notes and be really musical with it. I might be able to blaze through a scale or something, but the musicality just won't be there. So that's a big one that's been recurring for me.
Number 4 for me is letting negative feedback discourage me. As I mentioned, in the past, I have set my guitar down for months at a time. And the root of that was really, I'd beat myself up about a bad performance, or somebody would say something to me. I remember one time I was maybe 17 or 18, and someone said to me that people were complaining about my guitar playing behind my back. And that stuck with me for a long time and really discouraged me, made me feel self-conscious to be on a stage with a guitar. And so rather than kind of leaning into that and working on getting better, I let it discourage me and I put the guitar down. And so, and that's something I still work on to this day. If I have a performance where I make some mistakes, I need to work not to dwell on it, but to just let it go and move on.
I don't have trouble with that. If somebody says that to me, I'd be like, screw that guy, I'm gonna get better.
There you go.
Number 5, not learning more songs. And that sounds simple on its face value, but what I mean by that is like not learning more songs and figuring out what the person was thinking when they were writing that song. Because learning songs is a fantastic way to get into somebody's brain that has done all the studying about guitar and see how they uniquely use it, and then you can take those ideas and concepts and apply them to your playing rather than just learning tab or learning where to put your fingers, what fret numbers and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about learning the nuts and bolts behind why a song sounds good and why a certain riff or solo is what you like the sound of.
Yeah, the building blocks. And I watched a video of John Mayer talking about that too. He said, don't just learn my songs, learn what scales I'm using underneath.
Some people say not just the what, but the why for that. I guess that's the best way to explain it.
Yeah, that's good. Number 6 is not including the metronome in my practice time. I used to not use the metronome. Now I use it all the time whenever I'm practicing, or most times anyway. But I used to never do it. And then I remember when I got in a situation where I had to play with a metronome, and it felt like a shock to me. And now the church we play at,
horror.
Yeah. Ugh. And now the church that we play at, they use a metronome, in your monitors. And so if you don't know how to play to a metronome, then it's really hard to play with the band. So that's something that I've gotten a lot better at making sure that I include in my practice time.
Number 7, focusing on too many things all at once. And with this job, like I have to be doing things for private lesson students, courses, YouTube videos. So it is scattered in that direction, but it's always been like that for me. In college, I was in jazz band, which is hard enough for me at the time, like brand new into college. And then I had to take classical guitar lessons. I was like, really, like those two divergent paths I had to do at the same time. And if I go looking back at it, I'm glad I did it, but looking back at it, if I would have just focused on one for 3 years, I would have been much, 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 much better at that one than having my time divided between, in that example, jazz and acoustic guitar. And that's been a theme throughout my life. It's always been electric and fingerstyle, and they're always kind of warring with each other. So if you focus on one thing for a sustained period of time, you'll get better at it a lot faster.
Number 8 for me is underestimating how long it's going to take for me to learn a song. It's always going to take so much longer, and I need to just let go of the expectations. And we were listening to an interview where somebody said this was a prof at Berkeley.
Yeah,
and he said that was one of the
number one misconception. Yeah.
Yeah, with his students was how long things are going to take. So I found that comforting to know that other people struggle with that one too.
And like when I was taking classical guitar in college, like if I could do one hard piece per semester, I thought I was doing good. And then maybe one or two not so hard pieces, but having the one per semester, like Asturias or I can't remember any of the Villalobos studies per semester, I felt like I was doing pretty good. So that gave me some perspective early on learning music, and nothing's changed.
Well, and before meeting you, the idea of taking months to learn a song was like, really? No.
But this comes back, if you narrow your focus, that time to learn songs gets shorter and shorter because you get better at that style of music. So you learn stuff faster in that particular style of music that you're focusing on. So.
Right.
Okay, number 9 harkens back to my sales days. I had a sales manager who did a top 10 list of why you're not making better sales or something like that. And one of the items on there was counting yourself out before you start. And like sales is like that. If you never ask somebody, say hi to somebody or ask them for the sale, you're never going to sell anything. It's like a slot machine to some degree. The more times you pull it, the more you're going to win. And guitar, I find that to be the case a lot too. So if I want to learn something that's really intimidating, improvising a jazz standard, a fingerstyle song or something, if I think that I can't do it initially, then I'm probably never going to pick up the guitar. I'm going to count myself out before I even try, and that ensures that I won't be able to do it. But this has never not happened. As soon as I try something and focus on it for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, I look back and I'm like, why did I count myself out? Why did I waste a year saying, oh, I can't do that? Or 5 years saying, oh, I just can't do that. Every time I've tried and put the effort in, it's worked out and I've been able to do it. The real thing you're saying when you're counting yourself out is, I don't feel like putting the effort in that this is going to take. And that's deep.
That hits different.
Yeah.
Ouch.
That's super psychological, I think, on some degree. But it's real to me. Every time I do it, that's exactly what I'm saying to myself. I don't feel like putting in the time and effort to. But it sounds easier, and I deflect the onus and the responsibility off when I say, "Oh, I just can't do it. I'm not smart enough. I'm not a good enough guitar player." And it's not true.
Number 10, practicing things I already know instead of embracing the discomfort of learning something new. I find that there have been times where I'll sit down to practice guitar, but then I end up just reviewing things that I already know because it feels easy.
And that kind of plays into the last point a little bit. Like, oh, I can't do that. It's too difficult or whatever, right?
Yeah. Or sometimes I'll learn a new song, but it's all the same chords or strumming pattern or finger picking patterns that I already know. And so that's nice for review. It's nice to just make sure that you're fresh on those things, but it doesn't actually move me forward.
Right. Okay, we have a few quick honorable mentions that didn't make the list, but they're really important.
Yeah, so for me, procrastinating with research. I could learn how to use my gear, or I could just sit and watch YouTube videos.
Speaking of gear, the next one is relying on my gear to make me better, or focusing on gear rather than playing.
Yeah, and lastly, not seeking out others to play with more often. I know that sometimes I would get intimidated by the idea of jamming.
Yeah.
And so I'd be like, oh no. So I would kind of, even in a musical situation where people are actually playing and inviting me, I'd be like, oh no, it's okay, you guys play.
That's one of the best ways to get better faster is to play with other people, for sure. All right, that's it for the top 10 biggest mistakes we've made learning guitar so far. Don't forget to share your biggest mistakes in the comments below, just so you can help somebody out, maybe avoid some pitfalls as they progress on the guitar, and we'll see you in the next video.
Like and subscribe.
Wow.